welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Rhonda Britten, Emmy Award-winner, 600 episodes of reality TV, best-selling author, named America's favorite life coach, standing ovation keynote speaker,
That's
peer
right.
expert on national TV and radio for over 30 years. Welcome
That's
to the
right.
show, Rhonda.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk fearless living.
You are
That's my
welcome. Welcome to the show, Rhonda. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn from you the power of fearless living. We'll learn about all this. But before that, let us understand about your journey, your background, so that the audience hears directly from you as much as possible.
that is so sweet. Well, I think you're referring to the worst day of my life, right? So how do we ever get on our journeys, right? It's not usually because we had cake this morning. It's usually because something quote unquote horrible or bad happened, and then we had to crawl ourselves through and get to the other side. And so and I also believe that the worst day of our lives are also the seed of our destiny. So when I was 14 years old, this is the worst day of my life. I was 14 years old, and I had my parents were in the middle of getting a divorce, and it was Father's Day, and my father was coming out to take us to brunch. And I grew up in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan. It's like 365 inches of snow a year. And my father comes over. He's like, "Come on, come on." My mom is putting on her blue eyeshadow and her rose-colored lipstick and buffing up her beehive hairdo. My dad's like, "Come on, let's go." My two sisters are hanging it out in the bathroom, and me and my dad and mom start walking out. And my dad notices it's starting to rain, so he says he's got to get his coat from the car. So as he's opening up the trunk of his car, I notice he's not grabbing a coat, but he has grabbed a gun. And he starts yelling at my mother, "You made me do this, you made me do this." And he fires. And I start yelling, "What are you doing, Dad? What are you doing?" And he cocks the gun a second time, points the gun at me. I freeze, he freezes, he blinks, I blink, I breathe, he breathes. And my mother, with her last breath, screams out as she sees that gun in my face and screams, "No, don't." And with that, my father, with the bullet intended for me, looks at my mother, shoots her a second time, realizing she's alive, and then cocks the gun one more time and puts it to his head and fires. So within 2 minutes, I'm the sole witness of watching my father murder my mother and commit suicide in front of me. And from that experience, I don't know how anybody else would handle it, but this is how I handled it. I believed it was my fault, right? I was the only one there that could have stopped it. I didn't kick my father in the shins. I didn't jump in front of my mother. I didn't grab the gun and wrestle with my father. And now they are dead. So for the next 20 years, how do you handle when your mother dies in front of you? Well, you can't be happy. That's off the table. Can't be happy. And so I put myself in a lot of bad situations and had very low self-esteem and didn't believe in myself at all and thought, like I said, I was to blame. So I started drinking, became an alcoholic, got 3 DUIs, tried to kill myself 3 times. And then I realized something. I realized I'm not very good at killing myself, not skilled at it. And I have to figure out another way. And I remember when I got home, by the way, when you try to kill yourself 3 times, they do put you in a psychiatric ward evaluation. And so when I got out of the psychiatric ward, and I'm not crazy, I remember going home and realizing that all the work I'd done over the last years, the workshops I attended, the therapy I went to, the books I read, everything I had done gave me a lot of tools, but they didn't fundamentally change who I was. They didn't change my opinion of myself. And so I realized I had to start over. And I thought about kindergarten, which is, when you're 4 years old, 5 years old. And I thought, what do kindergartners do? I have to start over. And I thought, well, they get a calendar with gold stars. So I went to the store, got some gold stars, got a calendar, and then gave myself a gold star for 30 days for anything I did at all good, anything good. So I'm talking about drank but didn't get drunk, or got angry and didn't break anything. That's the level I was at. And at the end of 30 days, though, I had a whole 30 days of gold stars. And that was the moment that I had hope. I had hope that my life could change. And that was the big, that was that hope was the beginning of the journey that I'm on, the beginning of what I do today. Of course, that was years later, but it started me on a journey to get me where I am now.
To get you, and there is, you are at so many places, at so many pinnacles. People have one pinnacle, you have got so many. How do you see yourself from those so many pinnacles and looking back at life? Are you fearful, fearless? Does that thing make you fearful still?
Well, you know what it is. We don't get rid of fear because it's part of our neurobiology. There's no eliminating fear. If you got rid of fear, you would have a lobotomy, right? Part of your brain would be gone. So fear isn't to be destroyed or ignored, or it's not going to go away. It's part of who we are. The point of fear is to actually become its master, like master fear. And, people think that there's something wrong with them when they have fear. I know for the first, when I was going through my difficult times after, not yet being healed, I never thought I was afraid. I never said I was afraid, right? I was in denial of how much afraid I was. And I just pretended everything was okay. I was in complete, like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. So when I look back at my life, I lived in fear for a good portion of my life, being lost, being confused, trying to be successful, failing, having a little achievement, then failing again. And it was only when I started to understand how fear worked and started to have a relationship with fear that my life changed, because fear does no longer runs me. Not that it doesn't visit me, fear visits me, but it doesn't run my life. And that is the key, is to understand the mental model of fear, create the system, understand the system of fear, so you know how it works in you, so you're not tricked by it anymore.
So what's the system of fear? How does fear work? Tell us a bit about that. We want to understand your understanding of this.
Oh, I would love to share it with you. Well, I wrote a book called Fearless Living, and I'm going to show you a picture, because I created something called the Wheel of Fear and the Wheel of Freedom. And the Wheel of Fear is that mental model, the system of how fear works. And it works the same for you, for me, for everybody, but there's a difference. I have a unique Wheel of Fear, personalized and individualized to me, and you have a unique fear, a Wheel of Fear, unique and personalized to you. But they all have the same components, right? So here is a picture of the Wheel of Fear. So the first one, you'll see the number 1 is the trigger. And the trigger is the thing that causes the wheel to start spinning, right? It causes the wheel to start spinning. And that trigger is the thing that you do not want people to think about you. You do not want people to know this about you, think about you. And by the way, I just want to say this, it's not about an event in your life. It has nothing to do with an event. My Wheel of Fear was formed by the time I was 5. It had nothing to do with my parents' death. And also the other thing is, you may learn about your Wheel of Fear, or might acquire your Wheel of Fear while you're growing up. But science now shows that we actually can inherit our fear. So there may be no event in your life that you remember why you would be, quote unquote, have this particular trigger. So searching for the why isn't the point. Searching and starting to understand the way the mechanism works is the point. Because once you start seeing it, you start seeing it everywhere. And then you stop being afraid of it and stop beating yourself up. Because in the world of fearless living, there's never, ever, 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 ever a reason to beat yourself up or another human being. So that is my goal. So the trigger is the thing that you do not want people to think about you at all, like ever. And mine, I'll tell you mine, just to give you a little background. Mine is, I don't want people to think I'm a loser. Now, was I ever called a loser growing up? No, I was not. I was not called a loser when I was growing up. It was never in my consciousness being a loser. Yet when I discovered my fear of being a loser, I looked at I could see in my entire life all the things that I did or didn't do that stopped me because of that secret, hidden, unconscious fear. So now that it's risen to the surface and I can see it, it no longer has to stop me. Now, I said like it has 4 points. So I've got the trigger, and then I've got something called fear responses. I'm going to try to get my fear responses. Now, fear responses are what most people think their problems are. So for instance, fear responses could be procrastination. They could be complaining. It could be comparing. It could be perfectionism, right? It could be blaming. It could be shaming. It could be self-pity. It could be, ignoring yourself, right? So there's all the things that you think are wrong with you, or all the things that you blame yourself for. They are not the cause of your life. They're not the fear. The fear causes those responses, so you do not see what the wheel of fear is, because they want you to stay focused on procrastination and perfectionism, anxiety and overwhelm. They don't want you to see the actual fear itself. So we as human beings just focus on all the fear responses. Oh, I wish I would quit procrastinating. Oh, I wish I would quit feeling anxious. But that's actually not the issue at hand. It is just the cover for the real thing that's stopping you, which is your trigger. So then we go from our fear responses, right? We go to our fear responses, all the problems we think we have, and we've all done it, right? Like, oh my God, I wish I would quit procrastinating. And then what do? We feel bad about ourselves. So we have what's called a core negative feeling. And that core negative feeling is the feeling you never want to feel again. You felt it. You felt your core negative feeling plenty of times, and you do not want to feel it. And when you have that feeling, and mine is worthless, by the way, my core negative is worthless. When I feel worthless, then I can easily get caught up in self-destructive behaviors. Now, most of us know our self-destructive behaviors. It's the things that we do that we hate ourselves for, whether it's drinking too much, or being too strict on ourselves, or ignoring our loved ones. Again, we could be eating a bag of cookies, again, whatever it is that you feel self-destructive. So this wheel spins all the time when we are in what I call the stretch, risk, or die zone. When you are about to have a new thought, when you're about to take a new risk, when you're about to take an action that you are not a master at, it activates the wheel of fear, because now you're in the unknown, right? Fear doesn't come and visit you if you're sitting on the couch eating Doritos. It doesn't visit you. It doesn't visit you when you're, watching TV or driving down the street, going to the same place you always go. Not going to visit you. Fear only visits you when you're about to do something outside your comfort zone, in the stretch, risk, and die zone. So when you step into that zone, fear is activated, and then it starts the process, right? It starts like, oh, you loser, Rhonda Britten, loser, right? And then it starts the fear responses, because I want to ignore that, right? I'm not a loser, I'm not a loser. And I'm going to start doing my fear responses: procrastination, overwhelm, anxiety, right? And it might be bragging. It might be being being a people pleaser. So a lot of people get love from their fear responses. And so it continues the wheel of spinning, just spinning around. And what I teach people is not only to identify their wheel of fear, but also to find what I call the wheel of freedom. And the wheel of freedom is how you move forward in life. And that also has 4 components. And so my job, my opportunity, my thing I love more than anything is setting people free in order to live the life their soul intended. Whatever that looks like for them, whatever their soul unleashes, whatever's their true calling, that is my desire, so you can live a passionate, purposeful, peaceful, powerful, impactful, meaningful life.
Absolutely. Well explained. And we'll come to this, to your book once again. First, let's understand a bit of more about fear. You have told your perspective. Let's understand the way we have understood. Earlier, they used to talk about, fear of the tiger, fight or flight.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
later
well,
on,
no, fight or flight is a fear response, right? So it's a response to fear. And there's what you brought up, the great example is physical fear, right? So the tiger, the snake, right? The spider, right? Those are physical fears, a fear of heights. And so when most people think of fear, when they hear that I work on fear, they most immediately go to physical fears. Oh, I don't like spiders. Oh, I don't like snakes. I don't like heights. And I'm like, physical fears, you don't really most of the time have to deal with those moment by moment. But we have something else called emotional fears. And emotional fears are what hold you back. Emotional fears are what whisper in your ear. Emotional fears cause those thoughts and feelings and those body sensations that stop us. So yes, that lovely tiger that we think, oh my God, there's a tiger. Oh my God, that stick is a snake. Oh my God, because fear moves fast, right? Fear is perceived before we even know the results. And that's why we want to be awake to how the system works, so we're no longer tricked by it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rhonda. Now, so fear of the tiger, fear of the unknown. It was always there. Fear
Yes.
of the dark. There was this whole great song also from Iron Maiden, that whenever I walk into it, I feel there is something always near. And this fear is part of our inherent. We are human beings always have been, fearful of the
Yes.
unknown and always learned.
Yes.
What about, but the fear of the known? Are we most of the time today not as much fearful as for the unknown, but mostly it's about fear of the known? Looking at the mobile phones early in the morning, we fear something bad,
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
Looking at going to the office, thinking about boss's mood, fear of the known. Looking
Well,
at our
mhm.
partners,
Yeah.
always fearful of things there.
Yeah.
Everywhere we go, and there is this whole industry everywhere which has made fear its business. How do you then, how does our brain, which was always programmed to think of fear of the unknown, can we program it to fight fear of the known? And where business fear is big business in today's time, how do we do that, Rhonda?
Well, it's such a great question. And the examples you gave me are expectations. So, one of the tools that I support people understanding is how they have expectations. So, when you say, "Oh, I'm worried about my boss," or "I'm worried about my partner," or "I'm worried about this," you're preconceiving when you call it the fear of the known because you've experienced it before, right? You've experienced it before, but you don't know if it's going to happen again. You don't know that today is the day that it's going to happen, but you've experienced it, so you're anticipating. You are expecting it. Well, when we walk around with expectations, we're literally inviting fear in. We're literally living on that fear edge all the time. Well, when you're living like that, when you're living in the made up reality that is not actually true because it's manufactured, your expectations are manufactured. And we create expectations in order to buttress against fear, right? We're like, oh, well, as long as I expect it, then it'll be okay. I'm ready for it, right? I'm ready for it. But all of that is just a waste of energy. It's all based on fear itself. So that's just another fear response. You preparing for fear is a fear response. So instead, what we want to do is we want to actually shed our expectations and instead live in intention. So you're going into work and you're like, oh, I'm expecting my boss to be mad. And I'm expecting my boss. It's like, okay, so let's say your boss is mad. Let's say he is. Well, learn some skills on how to masterfully work with him, how to masterfully communicate with him. So most of us have not learned the skills and the tools because they're not out. We don't learn them in school. We don't learn them in college. We don't learn them. And so we need to have the skills and the tools so that we can stay centered, stay into ourselves, stay clear on what our intention is, so that regardless of what's happening out there, we can live the life our soul intended, right? So yes, it's the known, but it's also like you talking about scrolling the phone. That's also an expectation. You're pre-anticipating. You're trying to find what's wrong so you can pre-anticipate. But that's also, you can call it the fear of the known, but it's also the fear of the unknown because you're trying to solve the unknown. You're trying to solve the uncertainty inside yourself. And so you have to find the culprit, right? I've got to get on my phone. Oh, my wife, my boss, whatever. All of that is distraction from living the life your soul intended. And it is fear driven and is actually stopping you from living your dream, living your possibility. And now I've had people say, oh, Rhonda, but I have to do that because it's the only way that I'm going to fix myself. It's the only way that I protect myself. And it's like, well, I would dare say that that's just an advertisement for that you do not have the skills and the tools you need to be masterful in those situations. So we want to learn enough skills and tools so that if your boss is a particular way every day, that you can manage your own emotional life and you can communicate in a way that is powerful and impactful. And whether they respond or don't respond, right, you can then manage it, right? You can figure all that out. Same with your wife. And then the phone is an ally when it gives you information you need. But if you are using it as a distraction, that's a fear response. So whether it's fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of success, as you say, fear of known, all of those things are really individualized ways of thinking of the generic fear of the fear of not being good enough. So we all walk around on some level with the fear of not being good enough. And again, remember, it's part of our neurobiology. It's part of how we are created. So it's not, like I said, it's not about getting rid of it. It's about understanding it so that you can master it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We talked about Tiger, we talked about Iron Maiden, we talked about fear of the known. Let's
Yes.
talk about fear versus fear. Earlier on, earlier on, the tiger used to be afraid of human beings. The human beings were also afraid of the tiger, and they were prepared accordingly. Today, we are afraid of each other. The insurance
Mhm.
industry also many a times wants to create fear, so
Yes.
that their fear is that they may close down, and that's why they spread fear. And we are
Yes.
fearful that because something will happen to our near and dear ones,
Yes.
we want to be away from that, so we buy that into that fear. But we are
Yes.
waking up, and the industry is also fearful because they may lose this business. The same
Yes.
way politician is fearful, and the people are also fearful at the same time. With the in office, the boss is fearful of us, and we are also fearful of the boss. When there is so much of fear versus fear, earlier the tiger was not that intelligent,
Well,
but
it's
today we
well,
are all intelligent human beings. We are all fearful of this one another. At the same time, we have to be trustful of one another. How do we tackle this fear of one another's interests,
well, this
and
is the
still
thing.
live
Yeah.
peacefully in these
Yes,
times?
yes. These are beautiful questions, especially now at this time in the world. We just had our election here in the United States. And so it is very prevalent. I actually taught a class on this tonight, because it is so critical. But one of the things that you talk about, the fear of each other, again, that is focused on outside of ourselves, right? We're focused on what's possible, what's going to happen, the stories, the things we make up in our mind, all the stories we make up. And again, they may happen. I mean, again, all those things may happen. But unless you have the skills and the tools to center yourself, instead of getting distracted or sidetracked by what's going on over there, what's going on over there, what's going on over there, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, right? It's like, okay, what if I just read something today about, now that our president has been elected and he's planning on putting tariffs out, that a company, one of my clients' husbands, went to work today, and his boss told him that there's going to be no more Christmas bonuses because he's now has to buy a year's supply of product before uh, Trump gets into office, because he's putting tariffs on things. So things are going to double or triple in price. So, so here is a fact. And it's like, oh my God, I don't have a Christmas bonus. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Right. All of these things are true. All of these things are happening. But when we get back into our centered self and ask us, what do we control and not control? So I'll give you an exercise right now. I actually ask my clients to do this. I have a piece of paper, and I have them put a line down the middle. And I do this with business people all the time, small businesses and large businesses. So they have a problem, whatever is going on in their life, right? Whatever the issue is, like, oh, tariffs, or my wife's family, or again, whatever it is. And I ask them, put a line down the middle and write down control and no control on that piece of paper, on those two columns. And then write down everything you're in control of on one side and everything you're not in control of the other. Now, here's the key. All the things you're in control of, I ask you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how well you are doing in that area. What I find is that most people are so focused on the things they don't control that they're not actually taking care of business in what they do control. So when I've done this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and most people are so, like I said, preoccupied with what they can control that they're not doing what they can. So it's about you focusing on what you can control, being aware of who you really are so you can live by your values, rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 with everything you can control, and asking yourself, well, how can I get better at that? I have control over this. You have control over your mindset. You have control over your thoughts, whether to keep thinking them or not. You have control over what comes out of your mouth. You have control over so many things, what to wear, how to show up for work, go on time or not, right? You have control over so many things. And we don't do what we can do in order to create a centered self and know that we are doing everything we can. So that's one exercise I really invite people to do. And the other thing that I ask them to do in these moments, and this is what I asked my class tonight, is what are you made to do? What is it yours to do in this moment? So here it is, tariffs or a spouse or a boss or, afraid of each other. It's like, what am I made to do? What is mine to do? Well, mine to do is to cross the aisle, to cross boundaries, to not think of the person as other, less than myself. I think of everybody as, there's only one of us here, and you're me and I'm you. and there's aspects of you that are me and aspects of me that are you. So there's no difference. And once we can see that we are all human beings wanting the very same things and that we are all part of each other, you get angry, I get angry. You get frustrated, I get frustrated. I want my family to eat well, you want your family to eat well. Then all of a sudden, all the things that we make on other, external of ourselves, those are all things we can't control, right? But when we shift our perception, when we shift the way we see things, then we do have more control. Then we're in the control side. I have control over how I think, what I say. I have control over my perception. So again, most of us are unconscious, and so we don't feel like we have control over our perceptions, but we do. So if you don't like what you see, if you feel like the world is against you, if you feel like everybody is out to get you, if you feel like there's nobody that I trust, or how am I going to ever get successful, or I keep on failing, any of those quote unquote negative, disempowering thoughts, take your mind back, take your perceptions back, shift your perceptions. Because once you start seeing you can see through the lens of fear, right? The wheel of fear, you can look through those lenses, and everybody will be the enemy. But when you look through the lenses of freedom, people don't look like the enemy all so much. They look as partners, connections, future friends. They look at wonder what's possible between two countries, between two types of people, different people. So we have so much more power and so much more control than we think we do. And so as we keep giving up our control, then this keeps on perpetuating the fears. So instead, each of us are individually have the power to shift our perceptions. So it's up to you, because your world will change. It will change dramatically. And by the way, your circumstances may stay the same, but your perception and how you interact with your world will definitely change, which then of course will change your circumstances.
Absolutely, Rhonda. So you talk about the power of fearless living.
Yeah.
Once I become fearless with whatever makes me fearless, how do I maintain that balance, that my fearlessness does not turn into brinkmanship, does not turn into belligerence? How do we do that?
Okay, well, that's such a great question. But remember that thing that I showed you on the wheel of fear and the fear responses? So ego, belligerence, vulgarity, ego, big-headedness, all those are all fear responses. So you and I know, if we just stopped for a minute and thought of all the ways that we act out all of our fear responses. Oh, I get big-headed, I show off, I brag, right? I people please, I acquiesce, I get silent. We know these things. We know these things. So your first job, everyone's first job is to actually write down your fear responses. Start keeping track of how often you are being triggered by your unconscious fear. So let's say that you know your wheel of fear, and more importantly, your wheel of freedom and how to get on that. Once you understand how your wheel of fear works with your wheel of freedom, when you start getting belligerent or egotistical or bragging, you already know that's a fear response. You already are awake to that. So once you start hearing it come out of your mouth, this is what happens to me. I'll do something and I'll hear it come out of my mouth, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute, get back, right? Because I am afraid right now, right? I've been triggered by a fear, whether it's I'm afraid of what you think of me, or maybe I think that you're smarter than me and I look stupid, or again, whatever it is, right? Maybe I haven't eaten well today. So sleep, water, protein, all those things impact our mood and our stability as well. So maybe I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm more fragile. But the more that we actually understand our fear responses, that is one of the key things. I'm so glad you brought it up, AJ, because if we don't know our fear responses, we're going to keep believing our fear responses. We're going to keep believing they are true. But once we know what they are, we go, here I am people pleasing again. Oh, here I am blaming perfectionism. Oh, here I am being anxious. And now we know what to do. We get off our wheel of fear, get on our wheel of freedom. Boom, done. And now we are back into our centered self.
Right, Rhonda. One thing more I want to understand is, we always talk about hope. We are always hopeful for the future, but we are also fearful of the future. Many of us are, especially with AI and everything else happening. How would you like to put your own assessment of the future? Are you going to is the fear going to be much, should we be more fearful of the future, or should we be much more hopeful in the future? How does the state of the future look like to us or to you?
Well, this is such a great question. So I am hopeful for the future. I believe that the world gets better because we as individuals get better. Are we going to go through fearful times? Yes. Are things going to get bad? Yes. Are things going to get good? Yes. All of those things happen daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Is the world going to collapse? Maybe, right? But again, that is not up to an individual person, right? It is going to be all of us together. So if I keep clean and I stay in my wheel of freedom and I support you in being in your wheel of freedom, then we together are going to keep moving forward in a fearless fashion. So yeah, I always believe in the goodness of people. That's just who I am. I believe in the goodness of people. I believe, like I said earlier, we all want the same things. And if you are acting out and treating me poorly, it's because you're afraid. And I'm not afraid of your fear. I see it for what it is. You're just scared. And so I don't respond to that, right? I instead love you for it. I soften myself and give you compassion, because if I can support you in seeing that there's nothing wrong with you, then maybe you can relax and feel safer. And so therefore, then you're going to be different with me. So I don't get caught up in people's bad behavior, because again, I know that's all fear-based. So my job is to keep my heart open, to keep my compassion, to keep my empathy, to keep my focus on the things that I'm meant to do, the things that source, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, the field keeps on nudging me to do, because I'm here for a purpose and it's my job to live my purpose, not get caught up in, oh my God, there's fear. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That's keeping me off the track of why I exist. So I want to do what I can on my track, in my purpose, and be as clear and fearless as possible. Now, will fear visit me? Yes, because remember, we're never getting rid of fear, right? It's always going to be here, but it's only visits us during that stretch, risk, and die. So when fear comes up, I go, I'm stretch, risking, or dying. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Thank you so much. I didn't see it. I didn't realize that. And so then I can take my power back, move on to my wheel of freedom, and keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. So, what does happen? Does fear visit us more frequently, or do we visit our fears more frequently? How does it work?
Well, like I said, it's part of our neurobiology. So I'll give you one example. So let's say you have a problem in the present. So right now, today, you got a problem. The way our neurobiology works unconsciously is that when we have a problem in the present, we will automatically look in the past for a solution to our present problem, right? So we look in the past, because what does fear want us to do? Look in the past, because that means, because if I'm alive, then fear is like, look, I've kept her alive. I'm amazing. And so we have to do something we did in the past, because she stayed alive during all that. So I'm doing a great job, fear says. I'm doing amazing. So fear wants us to focus on the things of the past and repeat those. That's why we feel sometimes that we're on a treadmill, right? Like why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep having this problem? Because we are automatically, when we are unconscious, we will automatically always seek the past to find a solution in the present, thinking we're creating a new future. And we know how that goes. So really what it is the key is awareness, and using, of course, our executive function and our frontal lobe. So if we are unconscious, if we are just automatic, we will always go to our past. We want to actually be conscious and awake and aware, which, by the way, when you first start becoming conscious and aware, it is exhausting, because you're like, oh my God, I'm so aware. I see so many things, right? But when we become aware, we have choice. When we are unconscious, we have little choice. So when we take our power back, we now have choice on how we want to see things. So now if I've got a problem in the present, and now I have choice because I'm using my frontal lobe, I can actually go to the unknown. I can actually create. I can actually be in possibility. I actually can reach out for partnership. I can do a whole bunch of things in order to create something that never happened before. So fear always wants us to stay stuck in the past, because that's where you are safe. And fear's job, it only has one job, is to keep you safe. And it thinks it has to keep you small in order to keep you safe. And that's what fear wants. It's the same and small, same and small, same and small. Keep doing the same thing. Because anytime you get out of the sameness, you're stepping outside your comfort zone and moving into the stretch, risk, and die category. And that's where your life is. Stretch, risk, and die is where risk happens, where you grow, where you transform, where you feel alive, where you feel possibility, where you feel freedom. So is it scary when you start stepping out there? Sure, because it's not familiar. But once you understand how that works, even though it can get scary, you welcome it because you know what's happening. It's not tricking you. You're actually saying, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. I am ready because I want to make these changes. I want to move forward. I want to be successful. I want to fall in love. I want to A, B, and C. Like I want to do that. So I am moving into that stretch, risk, and die zone so that I can take those risks, so I can become that person, so I can have that success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now we are having a relationship with fear. We're saying, yeah, fear, fear's gonna come visit me. Okay, good to go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. There is
Let's
so
do
much
it.
to Let's do it. There is so much to learn from you, Rhonda, about so many things in life, especially about fear and fearless living. There is also your book. You have written several books, but this one, Fearless Living. Tell us a bit about this book. Who is this book for? What does your book deal with? Is it for only fearful people, or is it for
No,
even those
well,
who do
first
not?
of all, everybody has fear, right? So it's most people don't see themselves as afraid. You know, I never identified as a fearful person. Most of my clients don't identify as fearful people, but they do procrastinate, or they're perfectionists, or they're sick of being a people pleaser, or they're not living their purpose, right? So my book is for anyone who is living a life that is too small for them. Anybody that wants to break out of how they're operating in the world, the sameness of how they're operating in the world, that wants to move beyond it. Because fearless living, I'm going to show you how to identify your wheel of fear. I'm going to show you how to identify your wheel of freedom. I'm going to also even give you a toolkit and give you tools in there, skills, so that you actually know how to handle that negative self-talk. You know how to handle those excuses and those complaints, that you know how to handle those expectations and turn them into intentions. And you know how a whole section of my book is about fear busters and fear junkies. Like, who do you surround yourself with? How do you identify those people that are really trying to create more fear in your life? And who is really a fear buster and somebody on your support team? So I give you all of these tools in one book so that you can become masterful. I actually was in an interview today, and the host read my book, and he said, and he's an author himself, and he's very self-helpy and personal development and leader, et cetera, et cetera. He's very successful in real estate. And he said, this book is so phenomenal. I learned so much about myself. And we did his wheels right there on air, right? We did his wheels. And so he started getting a little teary-eyed because he's like, oh my God, we hit it and I see it now. And that's the point. You know, take the blinders off your eyes, take the fear out of your heart, and actually decide that you are worth the risk of loving yourself and accepting yourself and having the confidence to be the success that you yearn to be.
Wonderful. As I said, there is so much to learn from you, understand everything about all these things. So, for those people who want to learn from you, know more about what you are doing, about your book, about being your client, what is the best way for them to connect with you, Rhonda?
Well, I'm going to give them something right now that they can actually start shifting their life today. So I have a course it's called Stretch, Risk, and Die, and I've mentioned that a few times. And it really is about curing procrastination. And it's really about starting to take more risks, to be able to break down like a dream or a goal that you have and like, why aren't I moving forward? Well, in Stretch, Risk, and Die, you're going to understand why. It's 3 15-minute videos. It's got worksheets. It's got a workbook. You've got everything that you need. It's very simple. And go to fearlessliving.org, fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, fearlessliving.org/risk. It's going to take you 45 minutes, 3 15-minute videos. At the end of the last video, I actually start talking about the wheel of fear. So you're going to actually see me working on a wheel of fear. So you're also going to get a little preview of that. And this is my gift to you. So go to fearlessliving.org/risk, put your name and your email in it, get access to the course. If you want to stay on my list, obviously, you know, keep subscribed. If you don't want to get it, unsubscribed, no problem. I'm not hurt, right? But go grab that course, because I know that if you just simply watch 45 minutes, 3 15-minute videos, we'll use those worksheets. Whatever you're not moving forward on today, you will start moving forward on in just less than 45 minutes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Be fearless.